Hello and welcome to our special on the 2023 Shaw Prize. Duncan Lorimer, Maura McLaughlin, and Matthew Bales share the Astronomy Award for their discovery of fast radio bursts, which are among the most extreme and mysterious phenomena in astronomy. Zella Chin was in the U.S. to speak with the awardees.
West Virginia in the United States.
So right now we're about 10 miles from Green Bank, West Virginia, and that is home to the Green Bank Telescope and a bunch of other telescopes actually on site at the Green Bank Observatory. We are in the National Radio Quiet Zone where there is no cell service at all, so your phones will not work here. Any radio interference from things other than astronomical sources can be a real problem for our observations.
Shaw Prize laureates Maura McLaughlin and Duncan Lorimer relocated to West Virginia to spend more time at the Green Bank Telescope.
All right, so Maura, where are we going?
So we are going to climb up on the Green Bank Telescope. We'll go up this first elevator and over, and then we'll look over the 100-meter dish, and then we'll get on a second elevator. We'll go straight up.
Astronomers Maura and Duncan met more than 20 years ago when she was a graduate student and he was a postdoctoral fellow.
And much more wide open.
He's very creative and fun to work with. He's also just a really kind, considerate person, and he's really fun. He has a lot of similar interests.
She's very funny. She's a very good storyteller. She just loves being outside and trying new things. We had this common interest of science and astronomy that keep us together.
The husband and wife team discovered fast radio bursts, which are intense bursts of radio emission lasting only a few thousandths of a second, that contain as much energy as the sun emits over several days.
We are looking for signals that are coming from across the universe, so fast radio bursts in our case. And so they're coming from outer space, and then they hit this dish behind us here. They bounce off the dish, and then they bounce off a secondary reflector up there, and then they hit one of these receivers to the side here. In particular, we use this big one here to search for fast radio bursts. The signals then go down from that receiver over to the control room.
The Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia is the largest radio telescope in the United States. The dish is the size of 2 American football fields. Data from here and other telescopes led to the discovery of over 700 fast radio bursts.
But in the beginning, the scientific community didn't believe in the existence of fast radio bursts.
So this is RFI.
Duncan Lorimer is from County Durham in the UK.
When I was about 18, I had the chance to use a telescope for the first time, and so I remember our physics teacher gave us the keys to this telescope, and it was me and a few other boys, and we went out and we looked at a lunar eclipse, and I was kind of hooked ever since then.
He studied astrophysics at Cardiff University and a PhD at the University of Manchester. He had a postdoctoral fellowship at the Max Planck Institute for Radio Astronomy in Germany and another fellowship at the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico.
The signal was so bright.
Maura is from the U.S. state of Pennsylvania.
In high school, Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time came out, and I read that book, which talked all about general relativity and black holes and neutron stars. And I just became really fascinated with astronomy.
She studied astronomy and astrophysics at Penn State University and received a PhD from Cornell University. Maura met Duncan at the Arecibo Observatory while working on her dissertation. Then they both worked at Jodrell Bank Observatory in the UK.
It's a beautiful evening.
Oh, it is.
In 2006, they joined West Virginia University to build an astrophysics group. They started little research projects with the students and used a computer program that Maura had developed when she was a graduate student to look for radio pulses from space.
The original motivation for this code that we developed was to detect pulses from pulsars in other galaxies. These giant pulsing pulsars have occasional very, very bright pulses. So you would hear boom, 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 boom. This is a time series with a single bright burst in it. And what the code does is it calculates the level of the noise, right? So it would look at the level of this off-pulse noise. And let's call that sigma. And the level that we set when we did this search, we said, this is 5 times the level of the noise. So we can call this 5 sigma. And are there any pulses that are brighter than that level?
One of Duncan's students, Ash, used Maura's code on old survey data from a radio telescope and found something unusual.
So we were immediately drawn to this source here, which is way up the chart, which means it's really far away. The other thing about this source is that we've marked it here as with large circles, which also means it's very bright. So this is what really got us interested.
That led to a seminal paper published in 2007. And that first signal or fast radio burst from outer space came to be known as the Lorimer burst. The signal left its galaxy about 3 billion years ago and traveled across the universe to us on Earth. But not all in the scientific community were convinced a new astronomical phenomenon had been discovered.
A lot of excitement, but also a lot of skepticism, as you would expect from scientists. People were saying, no, that's just clearly can't be real. It must be something in instrumental origin in your data.
Scientists started hunting for more fast radio bursts.
And I found so many bursts, but it turns out they were coming from microwave ovens at Parkes telescopes. So it looked like for a while the Lorimer burst might be some kind of, microwave phenomenon from people heating up their lunch.
Even Maura started to doubt the Lorimer burst.
We looked through a lot of other data looking for similar signals, and we didn't find any. So I actually did publish a paper, maybe these things aren't real, because it was very unusual that we didn't find another one. And all of this sky we searched with this same algorithm.
The rest of the industry took convincing. So did you think about giving up?
Sure. I certainly did have doubts from time to time, but I deep down, my gut feeling was that this is something new and we shouldn't waste this opportunity.
The scientific community gradually became more convinced of fast radio bursts around 2013.
The final thing that convinced us, what really convinced me, was when we actually started finding them with other telescopes, like the Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico, like the Green Bank telescope. So once we started seeing them with lots of different properties, lots of different telescopes, then we knew for sure that these were real objects, real sources. Amazingly cool, because say you detect an FRB.
Fast forward to today, Maura is the chair of the department, and Duncan is Associate Dean of Research. Both continue to research fast radio bursts.
Fast radio bursts has just taken astronomy by storm. It's now this leading field of it by itself in astronomy. It touches on cosmology and fundamental physics and, nuclear matter, studies of nuclear matter, and new phenomena.
And to this day, Duncan and Maura, to a lesser extent, but still Maura, are leaders of the field. Pretty much if you want to know anything about an FRB, you would ask Duncan. And so it's a rapidly changing field because it's so new.
Earl Seamy hired Duncan and Maura almost 20 years ago, when they were rising stars in radio astronomy. The university changed the faculty name to the Department of Physics and Astronomy because of them.
Well, their impact, whether it's in pulsar timing or fast radio bursts or just the entire spectrum of work they've done, it's really led the world in radio astronomy.
And they continue to work on breaking new ground in their field.
We're observing FRBs right now, and we're using these the data that we're collecting to develop new algorithms to learn how to search for FRBs more efficiently. So we're using artificial intelligence techniques to scour the data. It's an ongoing adventure.
A lot of my time right now is also being devoted to a project called NanoGrav. NanoGrav stands for the North American Nanohertz Observatory for Gravitational Waves. And this is a collaboration where we're using high precision timing of radio pulsars to look for very tiny perturbations in the arrival times of pulses from these pulsars due to low frequency ripples in space-time called gravitational waves.
Outside of the office, the couple are busy raising their 3 sons. They live in a historic home in Morgantown, built in the 1920s. Their youngest son, Owen, says his parents are more than just scientists.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. He likes to play music. She also likes to play music. She's in a couple groups and things, just like my dad. They're both very smart.
The couple recently celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary.
We immediately clicked, not only as a couple, but found a way to work together and have common projects. Both of us love kids. As each one came along, they just enriched our lives in different ways. So a year from now, our oldest son, will likely be off to college. So the house is going to get a little quieter, and we're just sort of looking at, what opportunities that will give us.
We'll meet the Astronomy Prize co-winner Matthew Bales in Australia after the break.
It's just really nice to win it with a former student, and especially one that you used to get on so well with.
Stay with us.
We're here in Melbourne to meet with Matthew Bales, the co-winner of the Shaw Prize in Astronomy. He led the team that upgraded the computer systems at Australia's largest radio telescope. And he was pivotal in the discovery of the first 25 of 30 fast radio bursts.
Astronomer Matthew Bales starts his day with a 20-kilometer bike ride.
I find that getting on my bike and riding away from technology and through forests and so on is very good for my mental health, and it's also good for my physical health to just stay fit.
He was raised in Adelaide, Australia. He fell in love with outer space at an early age.
We had the moon landing when I was 6 years old, and that was a really big thing at the time. We actually bought a television set so that we could watch the moon landing live. And I remember my mother coming and grabbing me and sitting me down and saying, "They're about to take a step on the moon, and come and watch it."
He loved mathematics and science, and his primary school classmates nicknamed him the Professor.
Around year 6 or 7, the teacher actually used to get me to occasionally set the maths test for the class. I think I used to make them quite hard. I don't know if that made me very popular with my fellow students, but I just had a natural affinity for mathematics and really enjoyed it.
He received a Bachelor of Science from the University of Adelaide and a PhD in astronomy at the Australian National University. Matthew was a postdoctoral fellow at Jodrell Bank Observatory in the UK in the 1990s. That's where he met Duncan Lorimer, Shaw Prize co-winner.
He came and started his master's thesis with me on pulsars, and we just got on like a house on fire. It was a great relationship, and he had a lot of energy about his approach to the work. He really loved the work we were doing together.
Their careers took them to different continents. Matthew back to Australia and Duncan to the United States, but they stayed in touch. Matthew was recruited to create the Center for Astrophysics and Supercomputing at Swinburne University of Technology. In 2007, Matthew and Duncan were at Australia's largest radio telescope, the Murray-Yang at the Parkes Observatory.
And I just said to him, have you found anything interesting lately? And he said, well, actually, I've got a source I don't quite understand. It had some unusual characteristics in that it seemed to be very bright.
Duncan's student analyzed old survey data from the Parkes telescope with the code written by Maura McLaughlin, the Shaw Prize co-winner. And the student discovered an unusual signal.
So we made these plots here which show the radio power as a function of time and frequency. This is a little cutout of just 1/3 of a second of data from the telescope, and it shows us how much power there is. So every about 1/3 of a millisecond we measure how much power is in the telescope, and we do that across these 96 radio stations. And we were shocked to see this amazing sweep across our screens that just looks so perfect and so bright that we really couldn't believe it was real.
A fast radio burst, or FRB, is a millisecond duration burst of radio waves that contain as much energy as the sun emits over a few days. The first fast radio burst came to be known as the Lorimer burst, after Duncan Lorimer.
When I first saw that, I was quite amused. I thought, oh, that's nice for Duncan. But at that time, we still only had one, and it wasn't clear whether that was even real. And I thought, no, I hope this is going to work out.
After the initial discovery, Matthew went back to the Parkes telescope to look for more bursts.
It was like looking at noise. I just sort of sat there night after night, hoping to discover another burst, but that didn't.
Years passed without discovering another FRB, and Matthew started to have doubts.
And it actually brought up some emotions of when I was much younger, and I'd actually published a paper that we had to retract that was a mistake. Oh God, maybe I'm in the wrong, maybe I shouldn't be a scientist, or maybe this has been a bit premature. And I remember discussing this with Duncan, and he was still convinced that it was real.
And the scientific community was skeptical of the Lorimer burst.
And at the time, there was actually a wager going on between one of the Dutch scientists and one of the Caltech scientists. There was the $1,000 bet that FRBs weren't cosmological, as it was described.
Meanwhile, in 2008, Matthew led an upgrade of the data recording system at the Parkes telescope from analog to digital.
So our group builds these what's called digital backends for radio telescopes. They're a bit like a custom supercomputer that can analyze the data very quickly. Together with my colleagues from Germany, Italy, the UK and Australia, we embarked on a digital survey of the entire southern sky. It was called the High Time Resolution Universe Survey, and we applied for thousands of hours at the Parkes telescope.
And finally, a breakthrough. 4 more fast radio bursts were discovered in 2013 with the upgraded Parkes telescope. And then a discovery from a different telescope. Matthew attended a conference in 2013 where an astronomer shared that she found a Lorimer-like burst from Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico.
I was absolutely elated. I thought, yes! And I think I really would have liked to have gone up and given her a hug, because there'd been so many years of waiting for somebody else to find one. There was an issue that all of the fast radio bursts had been discovered at Parkes. So I thought, oh, at last, they're happening on both sides of the world. It's not just a local Parkes phenomenon. And that was incontrovertible proof that they were real.
So far, over 700 fast radio bursts have been published in articles, and at least 60 more FRBs repeat.
So do we know what causes a fast radio burst?
We know what caused one, and that was a star called a magnetar. These are the most magnetic stars in the whole universe, and they seem to be so unstable that once every few years they have an explosion on their surface, which gives rise to not only a burst of radio waves, but also a burst of X-rays. As for the rest of them, they could come from colliding neutron stars or black holes, And that's part of the excitement of the field, trying to work out exactly what causes them.
So it's a great unknown.
It's a great unknown. The other fantastic thing is that you can use a fast radio burst as a probe of the universe. They're almost like an electron counter. So every time the fast radio burst goes past an electron, it gets a little delay, and we can use that delay to actually count how many electrons there are between us and where the fast radio burst came from.
Adam Dowler is also an astrophysics professor at Swinburne University and studies fast radio bursts.
They're very extreme phenomena, and so if we can understand how they're produced, we can understand a bit better just how the universe is put together.
He has known Matthew for 20 years and credits him for kickstarting the FRB field.
Matthew's been at the forefront of continued technological advances at a number of different radio telescopes that have really contributed to expanding the detected fast radio burst population.
Nowadays, Matthew is the director of the Australian Research Council's Centre of Excellence for Gravitational Wave Discovery. He leads a team of scientists to detect gravitational waves caused by black holes in the universe.
The distance of closest approach to the Sun actually changes.
And he's on a mission to mentor the next generation of scientists.
Unfortunately, nobody at my high school really knew much about how you could become a scientist. And so I like to be able to give an opportunity to young kids to learn about science, and whether or not they become a scientist or not doesn't really worry me. It's more just understanding how you could potentially do that. Oh no, it's 24 inputs.
This high schooler has been researching with Matthew since he was 12 years old. He wants to follow in Matthew's footsteps when he grows up.
I want to make big discoveries. I do want to eventually lead Australian research organisations just like he did. I often look up to him. So he's one of those people who cracks a joke, who's willing to support young people.
Here, Luca, do you want a leaf?
Science is never far from Matthew's life. His daughter Rachel says her father naturally teaches the grandkids about outer space.
Dad is very hands-on as a grandpa, and you can see his passion for STEM coming through with what he encourages the kids towards. Like, he loves talking with my daughter about whether you can see the sun or the moon in the sky.
When Marion Bales was a medical student, she saw something special in Matthew and asked him out. 40 years later, the retired doctor and astronomer have 4 children and 4 grandkids. She's very proud that her husband is receiving the Shaw Prize.
It's very exciting, especially as it was a discovery from quite a long time ago that took the international scientific community a while to really accept and embrace. So I think it's just really nice for him to have that recognition.
Join us next week for a Shaw Prize special on the winners of the Life Science and Medicine and Mathematical Sciences prizes, plus a Chinese laureate.
And welcome to our special on the 2023 Shaw Prize. Eva Nogales and Patrick Cramer share the Shaw Prize in Life Science and Medicine for pioneering structural biology. Shing-Tung and Vladimir Drinfeld share the Shaw Prize in Mathematical Sciences for their contributions related to mathematical physics. Reporter Zella Chin spoke to each of them about their work.
on a bright summer day, mathematician Shing-Tung brings a group of students to tour his alma mater, Puiqing Middle School in Hong Kong.
This is the yearbook of my high school, and there's a photo of my class. The class about 45 people, I think, when I'm standing here. Many of my classmates are very active and in some sense aggressive for the future of our career in those days.
He credits the teachers in the middle school for sparking his interest in mathematics. Yao was born in Shantou, China in 1949, and he was raised in Hong Kong. Yao was the fifth child of 8 children. His father taught at several colleges to make ends meet.
The whole family is not in good shape, but we survive and we have fun still. I mean, although it's poor. I guess in those days in the village, we can go to school with very small amount of money, tuition, but food is rather not enough.
He lived in a village in Shantin. When he was about 10 years old, his teacher assigned him to be the leader of a study group to prepare for upcoming exams.
And I have no idea what that means to be leader and to try to learn how to do exam. So I become the leader of this small group. Sometimes even fighting, fist fight with people, and stealing things.
But Yao had to grow up quickly when at age 14 his father became sick and passed away. He became a math tutor to help earn money for the family. After middle school, Yao majored in math at Chinese University. And then he went to the US for graduate study at the University of California, Berkeley. Chen Xingsheng, the first Shaw Math Laureate, and a professor at UC Berkeley, became Yao's PhD advisor.
Very stimulating to know that a Chinese mathematician, Chen, could be a very prominent figure in mathematics community. That was an encouragement for me.
Yao is known for his works in differential geometry and Kähler geometry. Yao is probably most well known for solving the Calabi conjecture, which is a problem in differential geometry. It all began with Yao's interest in Einstein's equation for general relativity.
The left-hand side describes the curvature of space-time, and the right-hand side describes matter that appear in the universe. So I said, can we find a closed universe? A closed universe where it is non-flat and no matter, a vacuum.
It turned out that the mathematician Eugenio Calabi posed a similar question. The Calabi conjecture studied spaces with some internal symmetry. It took Yao 6 years to solve this formula.
This is the equation to solve the Calabi conjecture. This becomes a very powerful equation in geometry nowadays. After I solved it in the last 40 years, has been very influential.
This led to the concept of multi-dimensional Calabi-Yau manifolds, which are the cornerstones of string theory and complex geometry.
His work on the Calabi conjecture was a breakthrough that opened up a whole new direction in differential geometry and geometric analysis.
Yao is a prolific poet and composed a poem to commemorate solving the Calabi conjecture in 1976. His career spanned over 50 years in the United States, including chair of Harvard University's Department of Mathematics. Then in 2022, Yao joined Tsinghua University in Beijing full-time. And he's founded several research institutes in mainland China, Taipei, and Hong Kong.
The Chinese mathematics at this moment is lacking quite a bit behind America, which is the best in the world. But on the other hand, with our billion students, and they are working hard, we could capture the lost part of in the last many years in a short period of time.
This is a brand new conference organized by Yale's Beijing Institute of Mathematical Sciences and Applications. He advises aspiring mathematicians to aim high.
He really encouraged all students and researchers to look at big problems. Like because small problems cost also quite an amount of energy, and you don't get a lot of fun or a feeling of achievement from that.
Colleagues are surprised at how down-to-earth Yao is.
Warm, friendly, very impressive. Also extremely impressed, and by his poetry and in generally how nice he is to everyone.
The Shaw Prize is extra special to Yao because it was created by Hong Kong's late philanthropist and media mogul Run Shaw and his wife Mona.
Come from Hong Kong, and I watched his movie when I was young, and so of course I feel differently. And especially I should have met Run so many times, and including his wife, so I feel differently from other prizes I got.
We're here in Chicago to meet with Vladimir Drinfeld, the co-winner of the Mathematical Sciences Award. He's receiving the Shaw Prize for his prolific contributions to mathematical physics and arithmetic geometry, including his invention of the shtukas.
Ukrainian Vladimir Drinfeld immigrated to the United States in 1999 for a better life for his family.
We lived in the city of Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine, and economic situation there was bad. My wife and I were thinking about our son's future, and we decided that it would be better for him to live in the United States than in Ukraine.
He had job offers from several U.S. universities, but ultimately he joined the Department of Mathematics at the University of Chicago. Because his mother was also offered a lecturer position. She was a specialist in Latin. His father was a professor of mathematics. From a young age, Vladimir's father groomed him to be a mathematician. He likes the fact that something proved in math will last forever.
That in mathematics, something can be completely understood. In real life, there is nothing that we can understand completely.
He received a bachelor's and doctorate degrees in mathematics from Moscow University, and he was advised by Yuri Manin, who made a lasting impact on Vladimir's career. Vladimir specializes in the Langlands program, which is a set of conjectures about the relation between number theory and automorphic form. When Vladimir was 21 years old, he invented what's called a shtuka to solve a Langlands conjecture.
In 1975, I was trying to prove the Langlands conjecture for GL2 over K, where K is a global function field. In order to do this, I introduced shtukas, certain mathematical objects called shtuka. And I used the modulus stack of shtukas to prove the Langlands conjecture for GL2. A shtuka is the pair L-phi, and more general shtukas are used by Laurent Laforgue and by his brother Vincent Laforgue in the proof of the Langlands conjecture for general reductive groups.
Vladimir also made significant contributions to quantum groups and representation theory.
A tensor category.
These mathematicians admire Vladimir.
His influence in mathematics is enormous. I mean, he is a creator of new theories.
Well, as a mathematician, he was always above us, ahead above us, actually of everyone around with few exceptions.
After spending the day at the university, Vladimir goes home to his wife Tanya, who also has a PhD in mathematics. They were introduced by mutual friends on a kayaking trip.
And we talked a lot, I understood that we had a lot in common. He was good looking.
It was love at first sight, and Vladimir proposed 20 days after their first meeting. They've been married for nearly 40 years.
Hello, hi, how are you?
Their son is studying for a PhD in linguistics, and their daughter-in-law is from Shing-Tung province and teaches Chinese. Xiaojin says her father-in-law seemed intimidating at first.
Just the past several years, and I began to really see the more warm and kind and also more human-like side of this great mathematician.
Andre says mathematics is never far from his father's mind.
From the time I was little until now, I have all these memories of, like we are going out for a walk or whatever, and he's just randomly muttering some formula or some mathematical term.
Vladimir plans to continue working on great math for as long as possible. When we come back, we meet the winners of the Shaw Prize in Life Science and Medicine. Stay with us.
We met up with Eva Nogales, the co-winner of the Life Science and Medicine Award here in Berkeley, California. She's receiving the Shaw Prize for her pioneering work in gene transcription, a process that's fundamental to life. Proper transcription ensures good health, and dysfunction causes disease.
Structural biologist Eva Nogales was born and raised in Colmenar Viejo, Spain.
So my parents grew up in post-Civil War Spain, where life was very tough. So they actually never had the chance to even go to high school. And they were obsessed with my brother and I going to university and having an education.
She credits her high school teachers for sparking her interest in science.
You were able to get enough concentration.
Eva pursued a PhD in biophysics at the University of Kiel in the UK, where she was introduced to cutting-edge technology at the time, cryo-electron microscopy, or cryo-EM.
The cryo stands for the fact that we look at our samples at very, very low temperatures.
In 1998, Eva joined the Department of Molecular and Cell Biology at the University of California, Berkeley. With her knowledge of cryo-EM, she set about figuring out the protein structures of gene transcription, an essential process for every cell in all living organisms.
In our body, all of our cells have the same genome, the same DNA content, but they're doing different types of gene transcription, meaning turning on different genes so that they become different. One becomes our skin, another one our heart, or another one part of our bones. Each one of these cells is deciding to just turn on a certain set of genes. The first thing to do this is to read that gene, and this has to be done by first identifying where that gene starts. This is the job that is done by transcription factor 2D or TF2D. This to bind the DNA where the gene starts, and in the process then recruit the rest of the factors that are going to be doing the reading of the gene, forming the transcription pre-initiation complex or PIC.
It took her lab more than 10 years to discover the structure of TF2D and PIC.
The tricky part when studying biological samples are how to obtain them, how to prepare them, how to arrange them, so that then you can take images of them that are meaningful, that are going to have important mechanistic information.
As technology improved, Eva got closer to her goal. And then finally, a big breakthrough.
So there was a time when we were collecting our data and doing our data analysis and things did not make sense. And it was very frustrating. And we were backtracking, thinking everything that could have been wrong. And I remember this particular student, he did something very critical that allowed him to realize that one part of this complex was moving very dramatically. And suddenly everything made sense. And from then on, we knew it was going to be difficult, but we knew what we had to do. And we could build from there.
That eureka moment allowed her lab to ultimately get the structure of TF2D. Similar breakthroughs were made to get the structure of the rest of the PIC.
So what is the significance of this work in day-to-day life?
It means understanding nature and how it works also allows you to understand what happens when nature stops working, when there is a mutation that gives rise to a disease.
These scientists say Eva is a leader in her field.
She's very confident and sharp and, not afraid to ask questions.
She is, in my view, one of the best structural biologists in the world. She's fearless, she's rigorous, she's energetic and passionate.
Outside of the university, science is never far from Eva's thoughts nor heart. She's married to a fellow scientist and has 2 sons.
What's on that one? Tie?
She and her elder son bond over a love of cooking.
Over the years, it became harder and harder as she became bigger in the scientific community to be able to actually interact with each other. So that was always a period where we could sit down together.
And her husband admires Eva for her drive.
If there's a barrier in the way, she will go through it or around it.
And that determination helped Eva to win the Shaw Prize in Life Science and Medicine, which she shares with Patrick Cramer for visualizing the protein machines responsible for gene transcription. Göttingen, Germany. Structural biologist Patrick Cramer always wants to know what makes natural phenomena tick.
You observe something in nature, something is colorful, something is beautiful. And then if you dig deep, you're able to find a mechanistic, molecular, chemical explanation for all these wonders that surround you in nature.
He received a diploma in chemistry from the University of Heidelberg in 1995. He studied at the University of Cambridge in the UK, where he decided to concentrate on structural biology. He became an expert in X-ray crystallography during his graduate studies in Grenoble, France. Next, he went to Stanford University in the US as a postdoctoral fellow to work in Roger Kornberg's lab in the late 1990s. The lab had been researching the biochemistry of gene transcription, one of life's fundamental processes. The genes in all living organisms are made of DNA. The RNA polymerase II enzyme transcribes or copies the DNA and makes mRNA. Kornberg's lab had been working for years to determine the structure of RNA polymerase II.
It was just that they had problems to get high quality crystals. And my contribution was mainly to find out, how can I get the best possible crystals, which then allow me to solve the structure. I was writing letters by surface mail to people back in Europe, asking them, can you look through your free? I found several compounds that people have not used before.
And on one early morning at the Stanford lab, Patrick had a eureka moment.
It was predicted that the polymerase structure is held together by 8 zinc ions. And now I could see those zinc ions on my screen early in the morning. And so I jumped up and the chair fell over and I ran out and I watched the sun rising over the Silicon Valley, and I felt really good because I knew, it's going to be a lot of work, but I will solve the problem.
His work in solving the structure of RNA polymerase II contributed to Roger Kornberg winning the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2006.
And these mechanistic insights are extremely important if you want to, for example, get insights that allow you to think about new therapeutic approaches.
Such as to develop new drugs to treat cancerous cell growth. Patrick returned to Germany to start his own lab in 2001. 10 years later, his lab made the first movie of gene transcription.
And then those snapshots you have to bring in the right order, and then you can animate the scene and you get a movie of transcription.
Patrick has also done a very great deal of making these scientific discoveries really very approachable by doing things like making movies of how this enzyme works. So this actually helps even on the level of teaching students.
Zhang Yumeng enjoys learning from Patrick.
I think he's a very good teacher and mentor. He knows how to motivate people and bring people all together.
Patrick spent nearly a decade as a director of the Max Planck Institute for Multidisciplinary Sciences in Göttingen. Recently, he has become the president of the Max Planck Society, an association of 85 research institutes. And he's working towards a better future for the next generation.
There's only one planet, and I think in the past we have not been aware enough of the damage that we do to the planet. So we have to change our thinking, we have to change our behavior, and we also have to invent, we have to have new technologies.
That's our Shaw special for this week. Next week, we return to our regularly scheduled Pearl magazine.